Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and of course we gotta talk about it, man. As many of y'all may have heard already, Daron Payne pretty much kind of stormed out of practice in a way. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't as bad as people make it out to seem, but of course we gotta talk about it, because now is it really the time to go ahead and trade Daron Payne? Is it time to find a suitable trade partner that'd be willing to give us what we would deem as equal value in return? We're gonna break down the whole Daron Payne situation, even including like what Pro Football Focus thinks about him, all of that type of stuff, his contract situation, and why it's so difficult for us to pay him with the other contracts that are looming and are currently in the way, and why Daron Payne is not a priority right now. Also, we have updates for Logan Thomas, Chase Roullier, Tyler Larson, and Sammis Reyes as far as injuries go, and a small Troy Apke update, because I know that's what y'all been waiting to hear about, man. But yeah, man, let's go ahead and get to it. Before we dive into this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately, and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure y'all go check out my Cold Turn to Film session for all my channel members only that came out last night. I'm also uploading the Percy Butler film session right now, again for channel members only. Like I've already said, I want to try to get a film session, maybe two, out to the general public, where I actually take, like, you know, a whole day or more to actually organize it, edit it, and all of that type of stuff. But these raw and edited ones that I do for my channel members, I'm literally just recording, doing very little editing, and we're just analyzing tape as we go live and then just uploading that. So again, I'm going to do film sessions on pretty much the entire draft class and even some of the undrafted free agents. Whatever I can get my hands on, we're gonna analyze it, even if it's just a highlight tape, if it's some practices from like the East-West Shrine Bowl, whatever I can get my hands on, we're gonna break it down, pausing, rewinding, watching things in slow motion, everything, whatever we can do, we're gonna do it. And man, let's go ahead and get into it. Without further ado, let's get it. Alright, so it was reported by The Athletic that the Washington Commanders defensive tackle Daron Payne walked off the practice field and skipped team drills on Tuesday over his anger with the lack of a new extension entering the 5th and final year of his rookie deal. Payne initially joined his teammates at practice. However, The Athletic observed the 320-pound lineman walking over to the side field, a patch of land typically reserved for injured players, according to a source. Payne is not dealing with any ailment at all. So, and that's the part that's really interesting to me. Like, he started practicing, I don't know what happened, but at some point he was like, man, F this, I'm gone. Why am I even hurting myself and they're not paying me long term? If he was gonna skip practices, I'm surprised he even not only didn't just show up at all, but to actually start practicing and then just walk off suddenly. That was really interesting. But that's the bad news. Good news is, even though he isn't happy about his contract situation, he still did team weightlifting and attended meetings after practice. So however angry he is, he's still going about this very professionally, other than the part where he just walked off. Again, it seemed like it would have made more sense for him to just skip practices completely, or to just even be there but not practice at all, just sitting on the side, where he ended up eventually walking off to anyway. Could have just started there in the first place instead of practicing at all. But either way, it's a really weird situation, and I really hope we handle it, man. But it brings us to the question, is it time to trade Daron Payne? There was a report that there were some teams that may be interested in Daron Payne. Now, it wasn't necessarily a report that these teams were confirmed interested, but there were a list of teams that people felt like should be interested. The Cleveland Browns, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Denver Broncos. People feel like those are the 4 teams that would make a lot of sense, especially since all of those teams, you could argue, are Super Bowl contenders, or at the very least playoff contenders, and they could be a Daron Payne away from being very complete teams. And, you know, Daron Payne, of course, isn't as impactful as trading for a Pat Mahomes, but he could be that last piece to a team that has great talent everywhere but defensive tackle. And for you to upgrade at that position and make yourself a complete team, maybe now you're one of the Super Bowl contending favorites. So that does make a lot of sense, but doesn't make sense from our standpoint. And what's really interesting, reported April 27th by Ben Standig of The Athletic, he reported that the Commanders quietly let other teams know weeks ago that Daron Payne could be had in a trade. And we did know that before the draft, and I was surprised that he wasn't traded during the draft, but then he ended up passing it even after we drafted for Darian Mathis in the second. And we'll see how this goes, man. Standig expounded upon it, saying that the team wasn't aggressively trying to move Payne or looking to give him away. It sounds like they were more so exploring their options given they're deep along the defensive line and Payne is entering a contract year. I don't know about deep along the defensive line now, especially interior defensive line wise. I don't know about that at this point. And of course, we knew before the draft that it was reported that Washington is not expected to offer Daron Payne a contract extension right now. The wording is right now. It doesn't mean they never will, but as of right now, he's clearly not a priority. And he is not a priority because Chase Young and Montez Sweat are priorities. Chase Young is not necessarily eligible for a deal right now. And Sweat, whose fifth-year option they picked up, technically is, but I think they're going to wait on that. And of course, Jonathan Allen's already signed to a pretty lucrative long-term deal. And of course, we're still waiting to pay Terry McLaurin. And I love Daron Payne. I would love to keep him. But paying Terry McLaurin long-term is far more important. Even though, again, I don't exactly know what's holding up the Terry McLaurin deal right now. It's not like Landon Collins, that post-June first cut money that we're going to get, like a little over $10 million, is going to affect that situation, because a Terry McLaurin contract extension won't even hit us for cap space until starting next year. It wouldn't affect this year's cap space. It's an extension. I mean, unless they finesse it some way to where it could take up some cap space this year to alleviate some of the cap space for future years. But I think ultimately what would make the most sense is that Terry McLaurin's deal wouldn't affect this year's cap space anyway. So I'm not exactly sure what we're waiting on, because at the very least, Carson Wentz is a $28 million cap hit that we're dealing with this year that we technically don't have to deal with next year if we want to move on and cut ties for free, no dead cap. So I'm not exactly sure what's keeping up the Terry McLaurin deal right now. I guess they're trying to negotiate. Maybe they do have the cap space and they're just trying to see if Terry McLaurin will take anything less than what he's probably asking for. But either way, again, Terry McLaurin, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, all of those guys are priorities before Daron Payne. But sadly, Daron Payne, along with Terry McLaurin, after this season, their contracts are done. So even though Chase Young and Montez Sweat's contracts don't end after this season, they are priorities. So in chronological order, they're not priorities, but talent-wise and what they project as far as building this defense, the future of this team, potentially making a Super Bowl contender, they are priorities over Daron Payne. And what's really interesting about Daron Payne is that Pro Football Focus doesn't like him at all. They've ranked him as the 40th overall interior defensive lineman last season, which I disagree with. He did post up career high numbers in tackles with 61 and QB hits with 15, also with 4.5 sacks. So last year was a really good season. I don't exactly know why Pro Football Focus has him ranked 40th, but I'm high on Daron Payne. But again, Terry McLaurin, Montez Sweat, and Chase Young are honestly priorities over Daron Payne. Even though it's crazy because, I mean, this whole situation was just handled poorly. And I'm definitely still more of a believer in Ron Rivera as a head coach than the GM. And of course, maybe not all of this is his fault, because you still have Martin Mayhew and you have all of these other people that are helping make these decisions. But at the end of the day, Ron Rivera is the one that signs off on everything. And the fact that we let Tim Settle go and Matt Ioannidis go, and I think Matt Ioannidis got cut because of Carson Wentz taking up cap space, which does suck. If Carson Wentz doesn't ball out and play like an at least a top 15, top 12 quarterback, that's gonna really suck. But if he does, then we won't really care, to be completely honest. But I mean, like I've already said, Tim Settle, he seemed like he was destined to leave anyway. It wasn't even just money, because we easily could have paid him more than what Buffalo is paying him. It's also an expanded role. He's going to Buffalo to start, to be the full-blown starter, to basically be their Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. Whereas here, he'll just be another rotational piece that barely gets to play. Even though when he does play, he shines, but he just doesn't get to actually get starter minutes. And so he was leaving us regardless, I feel like. So I can't necessarily blame them for that. But the fact that you lost Tim Settle and Matt Ioannidis, and then you're potentially about to lose Daron Payne, and then you justify drafting for Darian Mathis in the second round because of a hole that you created, I just don't like it. I don't like the whole situation. I feel like that's one of the worst. I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes this Ron Rivera era has made since he's been here. Of course, I'm really upset about some guys that we didn't draft that I wanted to draft. I mean, I was willing to trade up for Micah Parsons last year. Of course, I've wanted to draft our quarterback instead of paying Carson Wentz $28 million. So we could keep guys like Matt Ioannidis and Tim Settle. And don't get me wrong, this Rivera era has come with a lot of positives as well. They've made a lot of great decisions. Their bargain bin free agency signings have actually been home runs for the most part. Especially if we're talking about value, how productive these guys are and how much they're getting paid to be that productive. But this interior defensive line situation is a really bad mark on their record. Again, I'm excited about Phidarian Mathis, but the fact that you justify drafting him in the second round because it's such a big need now when you technically created the need, I just don't like it. But yeah, man, are we gonna have to end up trading him? I mean, what can you even trade Daron Payne for? Honestly, I think at best you would get as a third round pick, and if we just end up letting them walk for free, I'm not even sure if we get a third round compensatory pick for him. You know, the best time to trade people away is right at the trade deadline, like late October, because the Super Bowl contending team may be a little bit more desperate to get their hands on a really good veteran player at any position, let alone defensive tackle, a guy like Daron Payne. To me, there aren't a lot of Daron Paynes in the NFL. Again, Pro Football Focus ranking them 40th in interior defensive linemen. I strongly disagree. And I definitely feel like we spoke about with those 4 teams earlier, a team like maybe the Browns or the Broncos, if they want a really good interior defensive lineman and they feel like that's the last piece to their Super Bowl contending team to make them a complete team top to bottom and gives them the best chance of winning a Super Bowl this season and even long term, because Daron Payne isn't old, he's still on his rookie deal, then a team may be more desperate and may be willing to give up more value in draft picks, more draft capital, more capital period, maybe another player in return during that time period right before the trade deadline. Other than that, it's going to be really hard to trade him for anything meaningful. And it sucks because we drafted him with a first round pick, and so to turn around and trade him away for maybe at best a third round pick does suck. But hey, man, it's better than really letting him walk for free at this point, even though I do want him here this season. In my personal opinion, hopefully there's a rainbow at the end of the road. He plays this year, he balls out, and he ends up getting his money. But even if he doesn't, I would prefer to still have him this year with the team that we're constructing, because we're definitely building. I mean, we're young, but with the way that we drafted, we're drafting high floor guys instead of high ceiling guys, especially the first 3 rounds. It looks like we're just trying to build on what we did last season, and we technically are in win now mode right now. Not necessarily in Super Bowl contending win now mode, more like try to win the division, maybe make it to the playoffs, win a game or 2 in the playoffs type of mode right now. Again, not Super Bowl contending, but we're definitely like, we're trying to build a team that can win now, and losing Daron Payne would definitely hurt our chances there. Because if you draft all of these high floor guys that don't have a lot of potential because you're just trying to build up depth and get guys that can contribute early on so that you can win now, and then you trade away Daron Payne and now we're not winning as many games because of it, those are just conflicting ideals and just pretty much cancel each other out, and now we're just sitting here looking stupid. So I think ultimately, depending on how the season's going, maybe you trade Daron Payne if we're just failing, if Carson Wentz is terrible, Taylor Heineke goes out there and is not good, Sam Howell isn't good, maybe we got struck by injuries really bad and we just already know the season is over, then maybe you trade Daron Payne. But then again, late October is pretty early in the season to know whether or not your season is over. I mean, if we know our season is over at that point, you might as well just go ahead and tank. And so then I guess you trade Daron Payne. But other than that, I would prefer Daron Payne to stay here and play this season out, and hopefully we end up paying him. Hopefully somehow there's light at the end of the tunnel, something in this Daron Payne situation that I just cannot foresee yet. I don't know where we're going to get the cap space. I don't know how we're going to make it work, but I'm just really hoping we do. And again, I don't have any idea of how it can happen. I just hope it happens. And then moving on, some injury updates. Tight end Logan Thomas with his ACL injury, center Chase Roullier with a leg injury, and Tyler Larson with his Achilles injury, and even tight end Samus Reyes worked on the side field in practices. So they're not so hurt that they can't even practice. Now, granted, they're not out there doing like team drills, but they are on the side and they're at least there at OTAs, which makes me happy. And Logan Thomas may be a little bit further ahead in his recovery than we initially thought. Same thing with Chase Roullier. Both of those guys are starters. I mean, Logan Thomas is your tight end 1, Chase Roullier is your starting center. So it would be really nice if we can have those guys back by week 1, and I'll keep you updated on that. But so far, this is all we know. Again, this is fairly good news, but it's not good enough news for us to be optimistic about them both starting in week 1. But as of right now, in their place, Wes Schweitzer is the one starting at center, which makes the most sense. So you have Trey Turner at right guard, Andrew Norwell at left guard. And I think ultimately when Chase Roullier comes back healthy, Wes Schweitzer will basically just be the backup interior offensive lineman, because I feel like he's really good at left guard, center, or right guard. One of the best depth players, not only on this team but in the NFL. So I really appreciate Wes Schweitzer being here for real. But as of right now, he's our starting center in the offseason until Chase Roullier returns. Also, Reported by Ben Standig, North Turner, the former Washington head coach and father of offensive coordinator Scott Turner, attended practice as well. Rivera's offensive coordinator in Carolina, North Turner, frequently visited last season as well. And then lastly, I know this is what y'all been waiting for. Troy Apke surprisingly took reps at safety after converting to cornerback last season. The other surprise was the special teams performer working high in the defensive rotation. So, I mean, you can take it one way and look at it as, okay, Troy Apke's playing with the second stringers or maybe even the starters. That means maybe he's gotten better, but honestly, I don't think so. I think, again, like I've said, with even the Buffalo nickel position, with the candidates that we have there, I think we're playing guys higher than where they actually belong so we could truly see if they belong. You play Troy Apke with the starters to see if he can actually play in a regular season NFL game. If he can't, then move on. There's no point of practicing Troy Apke against backups only, and then he looks good against backups, and then he goes out there in a real regular season game and plays and he looks terrible. So you got to see what he looks like against the starters. If he can't perform, it's time to move on. So that's how I view the Troy Apke playing higher than his depth chart position says he should be. I think they're just trying to isolate him, put all of the starters or second stringers out there, throw Troy Apke out there with him. If he can't hang, then he shouldn't be on the team. Or at the very least, he's just reduced to only being an elite special teams gunner. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please let me know how you feel about the whole Daron Payne situation. Are you optimistic that we will keep him long term? If you want to trade him, when do you want to trade him? Before the season starts, after the season, or right before the trade deadline? And what do you think we'd even be able to get for him? Do you think we can get a third-round pick or better? Also, are you optimistic about Logan Thomas and Chase Roullier returning it back to 100% health by week 1, or at least healthy enough to be able to play week 1 against the Jaguars? Or will we just probably end up sitting both of them if they're even close to not being ready, just because it's the Jaguars and maybe we can win without them anyway and don't want to risk further injury? But yeah, man, definitely get in the comment section. Let me know how y'all feel about all of those topics, and of course, please leave a like on the video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And I also appreciate all of my supporters, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors whose names you scrolling on the screen right now. Man, I really appreciate y'all. I'm getting those film sessions out to y'all. I hope y'all are enjoying them. Catch y'all later. I'm out.